Hey guys, VeganTaz here, and today we're going to be doing a vegan chili tofu recipe. Now, obviously ever since I've gone vegan, I can't have chili paneer anymore, so I've sort of put a little bit of a twist on it. I've taken some influence from ChatGPT, and I've also, sort of experimented with what works. So let's go through the ingredients. I've got here 3 blocks of extra firm tofu, so 280 grams, so this will be 840 grams in total. I've got 3 courgettes, 2 medium-sized onions, 3 bell peppers. I've got a packet of mushrooms here, 250 grams chestnut mushrooms. I've got some paper towels just to dry out the tofu because it will be quite moist once I get it out of the packets. I've got 3 pans. I've got one for frying the tofu, one for the veg while I'm frying the tofu, and then one where I mix it all together with the sauce. Going to be using, for sauces, I'm going to use 2 packets of Blue Dragon sweet chili and garlic. I'm going to be using 50 grams of soy sauce, 50 grams of Tabasco, sriracha sauce. You can use any sriracha sauce. Tabasco is the only brand I could find. Tomato puree, I'm going to be using about 50 grams of this. Olive oil is obviously for the tofu, with the frying the veg as well. In terms of like seasonings, we've got garlic granules, ginger ground, crushed chilies, paprika, and obviously some black peppercorns. And then we've got some Himalayan salt here as well for the end. I'm also going to be using the air fryer, so I'm going to basically, I think it's going to be too much tofu to do in one batch in the air fryer, so I'm going to be doing half in the air fryer, and then I'm going to be doing half in the pan while I'm cutting up the veg. Anyway, let's get started. I'll start off with the tofu. I'll show you how I'm going to dry it. Hey guys, so I've just unpackaged all the tofu. As you can see, I've drained all the water, but it's still moist. But before I start drying anything, I'm just going to preheat the air fryer. So I will start that. And while it's preheating, now I can start to, use a kitchen towel, getting rid of as much moisture as I can from the tofu. Because if it's too moist, it's going to impact the sauce. It'll be a bit too watery. And I want the tofu to be extra firm once it's cooked as well. So I'm just going to dab it down with some kitchen towel, get rid of all of the outside moisture while the air fryer is preheating. Okay, now I'm just going to cut the tofu, and to cut the tofu I'm just going to do it 3 cuts there, 3 cuts there, and 3 cuts there, because it's a cube. That'll be enough. The chunks will be a good size, so I'll skip over once I've done that. Okay, so I like my tofu chunks quite big, so it's all done now. Now I'm going to put half in the frying pan, half in the air fryer, which I'll show you now. So obviously for the frying pan, I'm going to put a few squirts of olive oil in there. I'm going to put half of them in there. I'll start the frying pan once I've done the air fryer. And then for the air fryer portion, I'm just going to put it on some foil. Now what I personally like to do, oh, that didn't break, so it's ready to be added. What I personally like to do is spray it down just with a little bit of olive oil, and I like to dash a little bit of paprika on there, personally. That just gives it a certain firmness which I like, and it's seasoned quite well. So half is going to go into the air fryer, and then half is going to go into the pan here. I'm just going to put a little bit of paprika there as well. Oh, that's struggling to come up. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to put that in there, and then I'll move over to start cutting the veg. Guys, so we're going to start off with cutting the onions. While I cut the onions, I'm going to occasionally stir the tofu in the frying pan. The tofu in the air fryer is going to be 20 minutes. So while I'm sort of doing all the prep, the tofu simmering on a low heat, it's air frying. So I'll skip back once I've cut all the onions, and then we'll move on to the courgettes, bell peppers and mushrooms. Okay guys, so all the onions are cut up now, both of them. I've diced them up. I'm going to start oiling the middle pan. That's going to be my pan for the veg. I'll put the gas on, spray a little bit of olive oil down, just a few sprinkles. And then I'm going to pour this in. I'm going to put this ideally on a medium heat. I want the onions to be frying while I'm cooking up the courgettes, the bell peppers and the mushrooms. So now that's on there, I'm going to give obviously a tofu a little bit of a stir there. Once the tofu hits 10 minutes there, I'm going to mix them around so all the sides get cooked. But while this is frying and this is frying, I'm now going to move on to the courgettes. So I'll show you once I've diced up the courgettes and those are ready. Alright, all the courgettes are cut up, you know, they're a bit uneven, that's fine, we're not perfectionists here, we're just making a meal. But I'm ready to put that in now. You can see the onions really started to get a bit brown there, which is nice. The tofu itself, you can see it's cooking up nicely, even on the low heat. If it's not cooking quick enough, I can turn that up as well and adjust accordingly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw all the courgettes in, and then we're going to get started on the bell peppers. Okay, so mid bell pepper cutting, it's now gone through 10 minutes in the air fryer, so I'm just going to use my hands. Obviously they're clean, and I'm just going to start flipping over the pieces of tofu to make sure they cook evenly. Then I'm going to stick it back on. I think 20 minutes should be long enough really for that. So let's go back over to the bell peppers again. I'm just going to give these a bit of a stir. I might turn this down now because I put it on a very high heat and I think it's not going to need much at the moment. While I do that, I'm going to stir the tofu a little bit as well. And then let's go over to the bell peppers and get those done. Okay, all the mushrooms are sliced up, ready to go in now, and that'll be the last of the veg. You can see the pan's really struggling to hold all of that veg, which is also a good sign because we want this meal to be as filling as we can, and get as many nutrients as we can. And mushrooms is, a great filler. So next up, obviously things are looking good. We've got 4 minutes on the air fryer. The veg is probably going to need a bit more time to really get in there, which is fine. So we can turn the heat up or adjust it accordingly. At the moment it's quite low, so I'm just going to turn it up just a tad bit so everything starts to cook. I'm going to give the tofu a little bit of a stir. I think it might have been a minute or two there, but it's not sticking, which is a good sign, so everything's looking good. We're going to move over to the sauces. Okay guys, so now we're going to head on to the sauces, while we're stirring the veg and the tofu and looking at the air fryer. We're doing a few things at the same time here, which is fine as long as we're on top of things. So the first thing I'm going to do is the scales I want to reset. But first I want to put these two in, then I want to reset the scales to 0 so I can measure out the other ingredients. So these will be the 2 pouches of sweet chili and garlic that I'm going to be using. If you can't obviously use Blue Dragon, use another brand. I'll give the exact grams, I'm sure, in the at the start of the video to give you an idea of what else you can use. So I'm squeezing that first one in. I'm going to dash that there quickly. The second one, just going to squeeze that in. And it's worth noting there is sugar in here as well. So if you want to cut back on the sugar, obviously use you can make your own sauce that is maybe a bit lighter, but I'm YOLOing it here because I want to get this done in 20 to 30 minutes, one batch of this recipe. So now that's done, now I've got all the chili and garlic, sweet chili and garlic stir fry sauce in there. I'm ready to start adding things. So I'm going to reset the scale and I'm going to start adding 50 ml of soy sauce. Yes, oh, okay, that was 59, that's fine, mistakes happen. I'm going to put 50 ml of sriracha in, so that'll bring it to 110. I've got to be careful, these scales take a few seconds. There we go. 110 I said, didn't I? Not 100. Okay. 110, there we go. Oh, one over, that's fine. And 50 of this tomato puree, which I haven't opened, so I'm going to use the back obviously to stab it through, and then it will bring it to 160. And this sauce, even though it looks really grim right now, once I mix it up, you're going to love it. There we go. Well, 162. Mistakes happen again. A few grams here and there, we're not perfectionists, it happens. So now I've added all that in, I'm going to start giving it a bit of a mix with a tablespoon. I'll come back once I get a tablespoon. While I was getting the tablespoon, the air fryer finished, which is good. All the tofu's done there. So now that, I'm going to start piling this in there, turning the gas off here because this is done now. Let's mix all the tofu together, that's fine. It's going to be in one pan, then we're going to move it. Ooh, a couple pieces fell out there. That's fine, the surfaces are clean. That'll go in the bin. And now, you know, I'm going to stir this occasionally, and we're going to start mixing the sauce, because it's all in there, with the tablespoon. So obviously this bowl is very small, so it's going to take a while. So I'll skip over once I've mixed it all and this is ready to be added. And I think we've got something good going here. Just while I'm mixing that sauce, the veg is, you know, it needs a bit more to cook. So I've turned the heat up, and then I'm going to go back and stir the sauce while it's on a high heat. And then hopefully we should be in a good point to start mixing things together. Okay, the sauce is mostly done. You know, there's a few bubbles there, but that's fine. You know, when we throw it all in the pan, it will mix quite nicely. The veg is getting to a good place now, so we can start putting everything into the pan. So I'm gonna just take this off. Actually I should probably maybe add a few squirts of olive oil in here in the base, just so it doesn't stick so easily. I'm gonna transfer this. You can see there's a little bit of, you know, water. That's fine, because that might be the mushrooms, and if you want, you can take out the mushrooms. If you want the sauce to be a bit more pure, which is fine, less watered down. As long as you're not using something like spinach, you know, which is very water dense, this sort of mix of veg I think is good. So we've got all the veg in there. We're ready. Can add the tofu as well. Tofu's already cooked, which is good, so we don't need to rely on any... Ooh, that fell out. Don't need to rely on any of the temperature to cook the tofu here, which is good. So now we're ready to just wallop the sauce in. Oh, that looks nice. That is the chili tofu sauce. I have to say, it looks very nice. I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to start giving this a stir. Really letting the sauce do its job. And you can see transferring quite well. And if you really want, you can obviously, you know, put a lid on top. You might get more moisture that way as well, so you can balance it however you want. Now personally, some people like to, you know, wait till things cook a little more before they start adding things. I don't play it that way. That's personally my preference. So I'm just going to start adding, you know, the rest of the seasonings really. So I'm going to start adding a bit of black peppercorns. I'm just going to twist some of that in there. Himalayan salt, which is phenomenal for bringing out the flavor, but keep in mind, obviously we've used soy sauce, so we don't want to use too much. So I'm just going to use, you know, 1 little cup of this. And then obviously if there's not enough, you know, if you give it a taste once you've reheated it and you're not happy with it, you can just add more salt later, which is the brilliant thing about salt. And start using some garlic granules there as well. Some ground ginger. Oh, that ginger's quite... I'm not personally much of a fan of ginger, but I'm going to use a bit here. And then, you know, crushed chilies, just to add a little bit of extra chilliness to it. I use quite a bit there. We tolerate a lot of, you know, spice and heat in this household, so that's perfectly okay. I'm going to start stirring it up. Oops, the glass is cut off there, so I'm going to stir it up. I'm going to leave this for a little bit now, because, you know, it's all sauced up and it just really needs to stay on the gas to heat up properly for maybe 5 minutes. It's up to you whether you want to do it on a medium heat. Personally, I'd go for, you know, a small to medium heat. Let it simmer there for a bit and let the flavors really carry the tofu, and then we'll be in a good place. So I'll come back to you, you know, in like 5 minutes once it's been on the gas. It's been cooking for a while, and then hopefully I'll show you what it looks like at the end. Guys, go then. That's it. That's done. You know, good protein content. As I mentioned, the sauce I used, you know, it had quite a bit of sugar in there. Not huge amounts, but obviously you can cut back on the sugar. You can make your own sweet chili and garlic sauce if you really want. But that's about it. So this is going to go into 2 of these, you know, bowls here, these Wagamama bowls. I usually throw them in here. I'm going to make another batch of this, and I'm going to freeze it. So I've got some good meal prep for the week. And then, you know, obviously I don't need to cook as much. I can just do big batches of this nice, you know, vegan chili tofu, and it's really enjoyable. Obviously mix it with what you want. Sometimes we like to have it with naans, sometimes with rice. It's completely up to you, but it's just absolutely amazing what you can do you know, with this ingredient list. Tweak it how you want, find what works. Obviously not everyone's going to enjoy it, and some people want to add more spice, or maybe it's not enough flavor. That's fine. I find it quite enjoyable. But this is the first time I've done this sort of style of content. If you really enjoyed this, I'll be looking into maybe doing some other recipes in the future. So I'll catch you in that next video.